Hello. Is this thing on? Is this thing on?
Good, Rafael. The next hour is yours.
Okay, so shall we begin? First of all, thank you for being here. They say when you go away to do an MBA program, one of these two things happen to you. Either you break up with your girlfriend or boyfriend, or you change your job. After 7 years of professional experience, I decided to go solo and build my own agency, build my own brand. This thesis will be the reflection of how, in that process, a bigger idea was born. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. When people tell me, oh, you started your own agency, you're an entrepreneur, I feel entrepreneurs just started the next big social revolution. They started a big new deal of iPhone app that will sell for millions of dollars. But for me, it's just another advertising agency. So when we went with my partner and we want to go all MBA and you do your business plan, say, okay, well, what are we selling? What can it be that will differentiate ourselves from the rest? What are we selling? So basically, we reduced it to two things. It's my experience and my partner's. But when you go then and sell to clients and you find there is demand for your product, you suddenly feel that the only thing that's making or breaking the deal is price. So you feel like this guy. You feel like this used car salesman, like, okay, how much you got? Tell me what you got, and you got the deal. So basically, when you start competing on price, you realize you have become a commodity. You're just like soap. You're just like beans. Just like any other advertising agency. So when we were doing our strategy, you try to look like blue ocean strategy and go to uncontested markets and try to find this new hole where you can thrive in it. But going to the office feels a little more like this. Still, we love going to work. It is what we love. It is what we know, and it is what we do. And if I may say so myself, we do it well. So we know that in the long term, we can't compete on price. I mean, we want to create the new Facebook, the new Angry Birds, whatever, but we want to first foster the place where we can create this, where we can create ideas. So we want to focus on two things. We want to focus on innovation, and we want to focus on client service. These will be our two pillars that in the long term will set us free and will set us apart and will set us free from that horrible price war that we will never want to be. The client service is a very important issue for us. And we basically, as a young agency, we want to start with young brands and grow old together. We want to commit to a long-term relationship, and we believe in friendship. And that is why my agency is called Raf and Mike. That's my nickname. That's my partner's nickname. We didn't want to be Aparicio and Burroughs. That sounds like a law firm to us. We're much closer to people. We're just Raf and Mike. We're your friends, and we're here to advertise. And relationships, just like plants, if you don't nurture them, they die. And talk about relationships. How about those Berliners, huh? Pretty special group of people, right? They say that if you share intense experiences with someone, like being stuck in an elevator, or even going to the army, you develop a bond that is built forever. I wouldn't call this MBA being stuck in an elevator or going to the army, not at all, but it is a very intense experience that is capable, I believe, of forging friendships forever. Suddenly, you're back in your office, and you got the Berlin Blues. Where did it go? What happened? But thank God, you can go online, and you realize we will always have Berlin. A client comes up to me and says, I have a new orange juice. What can I do with it? We tell them, okay, well, what's cool about your orange juice? It's orange juice. Okay, so how are we going to sell that? Well, she tells us it's got collagen inside. And surprisingly enough, collagen is something that you find in skin creams and beauty products, but that really resonated with us. And she told us it was a trend from Japan. We can call up Tokyo. We can call up, and we did. And surely enough, it was a trend that was 10 years ago. We're a little late. But it did have us the insights that we needed. And surely enough, what we got was that orange juice was sold in the beauty section. It wasn't sold in the orange juice section. So when we came back to our client, imagine her reaction when we go, oh, we talked to Tokyo, they just told us that we should do this and this and that. Client goes open wide, like, I can't believe you just did all that. I mean, I thought it was just you two guys. You guys are now global? That's amazing. From Manchester, with love. We go and sell a co-creation workshop with a client. And we tell them, no, we want to do all this kind of stuff. The client tells us, that sounds great, that sounds awesome. Then we freak out. What are we going to do that day? What should we prepare? We go online. I ask our friends, guys, what do you think we could do? I get a 2-page, this is short from what you're seeing. This is a 2-page Facebook message from Lorna Hodden, disruption director at TBWA Manchester. And she tells us step by step what to do. Surely enough, that message came 2 days late. We did great, by the way. But in a way, if you think that by that message coming 2 days late and that it's wasted, you're a fool. In New York, with love as well, I have a friend that basically has access to a David Droga lecture for the Berlin School students. I am a Berlin School student, but I'm in Bogota at the moment. I really want to see David Droga. What can we do? I have Nick Arnold from Melbourne, which is currently living in the UK, hold his iPhone for an hour or so I can watch it directly on my MacBook Pro in Bogota. And it worked out perfectly. So where I'm getting at is, let me pick your brain, and I'll let you pick mine, because we're sharing the world's most valuable asset, knowledge, out of respect, out of passion, out of love for the job, out of friendship. Now imagine if this was managed, this was connected, this was nurtured. Behind every good brand, there's a good story. We already have the story. We're just missing the brand. So I give to you my thesis, Branding Friendship, the Berlin Exchange. What is branding friendship? It's a look at the power of branding, personal branding, and group branding. The Berlin Exchange is a deeper approach into knowledge networks, their design and management, and the potential to foster one within students from the Berlin School. So I broke down my thesis question, since it was a very broad one. Thought, how can a network help my brand? So I broke my thesis into 2 topics. It was networks, because I wanted to explain what do I mean by network. I wanted to explain what do I mean by my brand. The thesis structure then was divided into 2, as I told you. Branding, personal branding, and networks, the knowledge networks. Because when I asked a lot of people, hey, are you part of networks? Do you like networks? What do you think are the disadvantages? They were like, what kind of network are you talking about? Please define that. So basically my thesis is around 3 pillars. The Berlin Exchange is branding, innovation, and friendship. So I molded my key interview questions through the same topics. Do you believe in personal branding? Would you name your business after yourself? If you were a brand, what would be your word? Networks, do you believe in them? Do you belong to them? And friendship and sharing, do you miss sharing and keeping in touch with other Berlin School students? Would you be interested in being part of a knowledge network composed exclusively of Berlin School students? So I reached out to 18, 19 Berlin School students who opened their hearts to me and their attention, which was very touching as well. So I divided them into classes, and I knew, well, I'm a class 9 student. My core was class 9, but if I really want to get insights from everyone, I had insights from class 1, class 3, class 4, class 6, class 7, class 8, and class 10 as well. From all over the world, mostly Europe, but there's a big chunk from South America and Asia as well. Gender, mostly male. I move on to what do I mean by my brand. So quickly overview on brand and what do I mean by my brand. I found out that a brand is just a charred piece of wood. That's the first definition in Webster's dictionary. It's just a charred piece of wood. And basically, what modern branding evolved to was cow branding. And it's just a matter of intellectual property. If you're growing your cow and she looks fat, she looks pretty, you don't want someone else to brand her. You want her burned that mark on her until that's my cow, that's my work. There was this guy who decided he wouldn't brand his cows. And surely enough, that's Samuel Maverick, which today we know the word maverick as a synonym of a rebel, and it's basically an unbranded cow. So back to the commoditization and all the things that we saw about advertising, there's a pretty nice story as well in modern branding. Modern branding was basically invented by P&G, and they had this product. It was literally called white soap. White soap. They sold you white soap. So they knew when their competition was doing equally the same products, Unilever and others, well, they had to differentiate themselves. And something boring was made beautiful. And that began Ivory soap, which even enhanced a lot of first in branding. They were the first to start commercials in baseball games and different stuff. And what we know now today as soap operas came by them because they sponsored soap operas. So today we say, oh, brands make content, they're so cool. It's been done. So I know everybody now thinks about it a lot. It's neuroscience. And if you read books like Adam Alter's Drunk Tank Pink, it's how little forces and unhidden can change the way we feel, act, or behave. And basically now they're painting prison cells pink because they know it's a color that eases people. You can never beat up someone in a pink room. Or don't try. But what I'm getting to is that regardless of the power of your brand, it will still trigger a perception, whether you're Beckham, Droga, or someone unknown. If you don't take control of your brand, somebody else will. When Ralph Lauren, or Ralph Lifshitz, started designing, the first thing he did wasn't, oh, I'm going to start designing like crazy and make the greatest clothes. He changed his name. Would you wear a Lifshitz? So think about it. What is your word? Just like the big brands do. Coca-Cola sells much more than soda. It sells happiness. Apple sells design. What do you sell? I asked that to some Berliners, some of their answers. I'm the go-to guy. Some gave Jack Nicholson, another personal brand, as their personal brand. In a way, a personal brand is being a little selfish. It's promoting yourself. It's saying, hey, I'm here, because if you don't toot your horn, many a few others will. So that is what becomes so polarizing about branding. And that's why people said in my interviews, 33%, I don't believe in it. I think it's BS. So that I coined as branding believers and branding mavericks, the ones who believe in them and the ones who chase, and I don't want to be branded. But in a way, it's a misconception to think that personal branding constrains you. It's not, oh, you need to now dress this way, you need to talk this way. No, no, no. It should liberate you, because the more unique you are, the more you are, the more different you are. And you don't want to be the same as other people. But the obvious individualistic and selfish approach of personal branding largely ignores the potential group branding has. This is a phenomenon that has been studied, and in the movies, for example, Marvel came out with a 5-year detailed, very conscious plan, straight up building each personal brand, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, to fulfill that with a big climatic ending, which was The Avengers, which was the 3rd record movie box office hit of all time. And when they launched Iron Man 3, now it's number 5 all time. So even the personal brand leveraged itself by the success of a group brand. So let's move on to networks. So what do I mean by my network? In my research, I found that as well, networks are very polarizing. Either you believe in it, or you're a network maverick, you don't believe in it. And so polarizing that 50% of the people I talked to were part of a network, the other no. And the main thing they said, just like personal branding, they said selfishness. Of networks, it's bureaucracy. And there are many agency networks nowadays, but yeah, I need to call blah, 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 Bogota, or blah, 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 Tokyo, blah, blah, Sao Paulo. Yeah, first you need to call the HR director here, and then she will connect you to, and you ask the permission to your creative director. Suddenly, the pitch is over. So basically, that's the big problem of these networks sometimes. So I wanted to research more and explain to my colleagues that what we should aim to is a knowledge network. So I stood on the shoulder of giants and researched what Etienne Wenger and Jean Lavey from Harvard University published and coined as a term as communities of practice, which then Bettina Buchel and Stephen Raub basically elaborated on, creating on knowledge networks. What is a community of practice? A community of practice is a group of people who share a craft and or a profession. The group can evolve naturally because of the members' common interest in a particular domain or area, or it can be created specifically with the goal of gaining knowledge related to their field. Where are communities of practice? Soccer moms discussing what is the best dinners for their kids, what do they want to eat. Chess clubs, people interested, have a passion, let's make a club. Or even art, the Impressionists. They got together at cafes, Van Gogh and Gauguin, they talked about art, and then individually they went off and painted. It doesn't mean they created something together, but their interaction did create something. Some communities have a name, some don't. Knowledge has become a key to success, and big companies need to understand precisely which knowledge will give them a competitive advantage. When they do that, they need to keep this knowledge on the cutting edge, deploy it, leverage it in operations, and spread it across the organization. There are 3 principles in communities of practice: domain, community, and practice. We need to define those before we start thinking about a knowledge network. So domain, what is a community specialty? And it doesn't mean it's just merely a club of friends or a network of connections between people. It has to have an identity defined by a shared domain of interest. Membership, therefore, implies a commitment to the domain, because why would you be something voluntarily part of that you're not interested in? Community, who can be part of this community? Having the same job or same title does not make for a community of practice unless members interact and learn together. Practice, what are you developing? Members of a community or practice are practitioners. They develop the shared repertoire of resources, experiences, stories, tools, and ways of addressing recurring problems. There are mavericks as well. And the research I read was inviting the participation of having mavericks in your networks, having polarizing opinions, having discussions of people that look the other side of the coin. So when you plan your community, it is tempting to develop a detailed plan. You want to plan structure, roles, memberships, requirements, documentations, everything as you would for a team. But communities are different. What you need to do first is trigger the catalyst for people be excited about this community. So these 3 pillars, which are called the burning issues, are branding, innovation, and friendship. What do communities of practice look like? Just as in advertising, sometimes to sell something, you need to, this is what you can do with the mob, or you need to show people what they can do with a community of practice. You can problem solve. Can we work on this design and brainstorm some ideas? I'm stuck. You can request for information. Where can I find the code to connect to the server? Seeking experience. Has anyone dealt with a customer in this situation? Reusing assets. I have a proposal for a client I wrote last year. I can send it to you and you can easily tweak it for this new client. Coordination and synergy. Can we combine our purchases to achieve bulk discounts? Discussing developments. What do you think of the new system? Does it really help? Documentation projects. We have faced this problem 5 times. Let's write it down at once. Visits. Can we come and see your office nursery? We need one. We're very interested in what you have. Mapping knowledge and identifying gaps. Who knows what? And what are we missing? Who else should we connect with? And most important of all, just friendship. What's up? Why focus on communities of practice? Well, in the short term, for members, it will give them access to expertise. And it's fun with colleagues. For organizations, it's knowledge and sharing. In the long term, for members, it's professional identity, and why not, marketability. For organizations, in the long term, it's innovation. Where can we see communities of practice? You can see them in government, in schools, in companies. And speaking of companies, that's where Buchel and Rob from Lausanne University basically built on these knowledge networks and the concept of communities of practice and what they call the Geneva Knowledge Forum. The Geneva Knowledge Forum is some of the 16 most important multinational companies getting together to discuss how they manage knowledge and how they share it. And these companies are from a wide variety of industries, yet they know that they each have something in common, and what something might know can always be valuable to them. And what they also encourage is basically, again, mavericks. Those networks that come up because management doesn't really support them, but as individual motivations. So they are called maverick networks in a way when they are not created by the company itself, but just by the individual. They say effective knowledge networks increase innovation, improve organizational efficiency, but they can have even greater benefits if they are structured and receive management guidance. And there are three key elements about knowledge networks and what they researched is improved efficiency. And we got that efficiency light bulb going on. That light bulb turns on. You got increased innovation. And you got employee satisfaction. They mention so much the employee satisfaction that they even call it the thrill of exchanging and participating in an exchange of ideas with like-minded colleagues. It's a major boost to organizational members' motivation and a satisfaction at work. They feel a feeling of belonging, recognition by peers who are perceived as competent judges. So there are 4 different kinds of networks. You got a professional learning network, a best practice network, and a hobby network, and a business opportunity network. Where should we be headed to? Where can the students take a knowledge network to? That depends on the students. Best practice networks, for example, in Siemens, they say if only Siemens knew what Siemens knows. Basically, it's something of a karma they had in the company, which was such a karma that they developed the world's best knowledge sharing platform that there is today. It's called ShareNet. They say between 60 and 80% value added we generate is directly linked to knowledge, and the proportion is growing. There are business opportunity networks, and from my interviews, I found this very interesting concept from an agency called Edge Amsterdam. They're sort of around the world, but what they say is crowdsourcing becomes elite sourcing. We are much more than crowdsourcing. When you crowdsource, you get a million ideas. It doesn't mean they're going to be good ideas. So when you do your network design, there are 4 stages to this. You got to define your community of practice basics. You need to mobilize. You need to, what I call definition time. And stage 4, where's the beef? I came up with these names. So let's research the first stage. The first stage, if we were to define it, what would be the Berlin Exchange domain? Well, it would be innovation in advertising and marketing. I think without a doubt. What would be our community? Community would be composed exclusively of students or alumni of the Berlin School of Creative Leadership. What will be the practice? The practice needs to be developed over time and will depend on establishing key network success factors. You align with burning issues, which I already told you are branding, innovation, and friendship. You foster trust because you need to, when you reach out to people, you just can't send an email and say, okay, I'll wait for your reply. You need something. You need a personal conversation. Then I moved on to mobilization, which build a case for action, ensuring management support, and establishing mutual knowledge. This is happening right now. This is my case for action. So when you do a case for action, you can do a 120-page thesis and a very long PowerPoint. Or what you can do is show that this is bigger than you, that you have something there. You ensure management support, which is pivotal to your network's direction. Are you going to be a maverick network, or you have the management's brand on it? Let members know each other's existence. Connect. You need to, okay, maybe I know everyone in the network, but this guy doesn't know this guy. Come on, meet. Then you do the definition time. You define member specialization. Who is who? Basically, the power of these networks and these brands, just as in group branding, is knowing who brings Batman, who is Superman, who knows to fly, who is good at the water. It's who is good at their specialization and what they bring to the table. You define appropriate communication mechanisms. Today, what I saw in my research, basically everyone was part of Facebook. So Facebook is definitely a way to start to foster some communication between everyone. Then you explore alternate communication mechanisms, such as live conferences. And it depends on the context as well. And as most of you are social media users, you must know there's each social network for each kind of thing. Maybe some LinkedIn, some find it more professional. You wouldn't put party pictures in LinkedIn. You put your picture with your tie on and everything. You got Twitter, you got WhatsApp. Because part of the multi and hyper-connectedness of today is that these networks can happen in real time. Cell phone can buzz and you can look up and something's going on. You can use Google+, you can use their Hangouts. You can use Path. Some students already use Path, which is more of a life-sharing experience, but builds on a very strong building block, which is friendship. And you can use Quora, which is a very interesting concept of a knowledge-sharing network for today. And you can stream things as well. And right now, hello world, we're streaming directly to that computer. So define your type of network. Time will tell. Will this be just a hobby network? Hopefully not. That sounds terrible. Professional learning network? That sounds about right. Where people just learn and build their individual skill base. Best practice network? Why not? Have a good documentation of what's going on. Lorna's message is right up there. If I didn't, it came on time for me, but if I save it and someone else has access to it, it's there. It's a best practice. Business opportunity. Who knows? So when you define member roles, there are a few, and this is taken obviously by Bushel and Rob. They say you need to identify a coordinator, you need to identify the support structure, an editor, a sponsor, and they highlight the characteristics of each individual. Who should be in charge? For coordinator, which is what they say the most important role, it needs to be a highly motivated individual, interested in particular topics, and it can be from any part of the organization. It doesn't have to be a low-ranking, it can be anyone. Then there's a support, there's the editor, and then there's a sponsor. You need to define a network heartbeat. If it's too much, too often, you kill it. If it's too little, too slow, you kill it as well. So you need to establish regular meetings, teleconferences, website activities, other informal get-togethers that can foster this heartbeat. In a nutshell, again, these are the 4 stages, and the 4th, which is demonstrate tangible outcomes. Knowledge networks are built on this, and that's why I started with my 3 examples from Tokyo, Manchester, and New York. You need to show tangible results. People will tell me, oh, but what can Tokyo and Bogota have in common? I just told you. There are some downfalls of knowledge networks. Imperialism, you can force your domain on others, on other members that might not be so interested in the subject. Marginality, might lose interest. It might feel like a flavor of the month kind of thing. Factionalism, people divide into blocks and they hold very strong. Disconnectedness, you just don't care and leave it. Dependence, which is on coordinators, when you depend too much on coordinators and, oh, but the coordinator didn't tell me to do this and this. Well, if it's a voluntarily created network, well, then you should be part of that. And interestingly enough, one of the downfalls can be friendship. When everything is too goody, too fruity. You know, and yeah, I don't want to hurt this guy's feelings, so no, yeah, his opinion is great, and it's fine what he says. So ironically enough, one of the biggest downfalls of branding friendship and creating knowledge network can be friendship itself. So in a nutshell, when I asked, how can a network help my brand? The answers are brand value, innovation, and friendship. And these are the reactions of some of the students I talked to. Would you be interested? Federico Miranda from Costa Rica, class 4. Absolutely, 100% interested. I also agree that idea exchanging and work collaboration can gain a lot from this network. Lorna Harding, class 9 from Manchester. Yes, as it's always good to know there's good people out there, should you need. Yukio Nakayama, class 1 from Tokyo, Japan. I need to work more on these kinds of things. Good timing, shares my vision. Florian Scheibel-Brandner from class 8 from Munich, Germany. Of course, and I would also invest some time and energy for that. And I would like to close by saying, stupid CEO says, focus on profits. Smart CEO says, focus on innovation. as we learned in Japan. So let's boost our brands, let's connect and innovate, but most importantly, let's keep in touch. Thank you.
Rafael,
I think you heard it from the passionate applause. It's very brilliant, it's very human, it's very intelligent, it's very contagious. It's beautiful to hear, especially I think from our side who have helped put this group together, that you see the value within that community for a new, let's say, a company. So it's not just a friendship club, it's a company. Have you looked into what also makes company works, that is resources, finance, funds, clients, paying people for their work rather than just calling them and say, let's have a fun video conference. We are the video tuppies, you know. But to organize that part when it really comes to engagement, that people also must make a living, you know, and needs to be paid, and if you produce something, you need to get royalties or whatever, how this sort of, the business part could work. Have you looked into that?
Well, honestly, originally, this is not meant to be a company. It's meant to be a knowledge network, and we're using one currency, which is very intangible and very difficult to measure, which is knowledge. So I wouldn't say, oh, your royalties, what you get for your idea, that I would say you earn this. It's basically the right that today for me, tomorrow for you. Basically, tomorrow you can pick my brain. I'll be there for you. I basically, when I said I don't want this, and again, like, I want this to focus on innovation for each of the companies. So my examples, what I brought in was basically more of people that can still live their lives in their countries with their jobs, but just know that they have something there. And it is a club of friends, a group of friends, and if business arises from that, well, so be it. But it's not the main purpose of it. The main purpose would be just exchanging knowledge, and that would be basically the exchange we're having. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it's even more brilliant than my perception was of the whole thing. I mean, this is really great because, I mean, so you have your company, Raf and Mike,
exactly,
and you tap into this network.
Exactly.
You know, and Yukio taps into it if needed.
Well, it was
and he works for Dentsu.
Yeah.
You know, gets paid by Dentsu, has his clients, and but if he wants to know from Federico,
when I started my interview with Yukio, I can vow for the quote that says it's a thrill exchanging ideas with like-minded colleagues. I had only met Yukio once in the Tokyo module. And we set up a date for, well, it was his Saturday, 9 a.m., my Friday, 8 p.m., something like that. But we talked for 2 hours. And we talked about Colombian winners at Cannes, and I shared my insights he didn't know about the Colombian market, and then he was like, oh, that's really interesting, and we just talked for 2 hours. And I'm sure we both hanged up like, wow, that was pretty amazing. So, yeah, there is a value that Yukio can call me up and I can call him up as well.
Well, count me in. Thanks.
Rob, I think it's a really fascinating and incredibly well-organized thesis. Thank you. I'm curious, just in terms of kind of the overall foundation in the research you did in knowledge networks. I'm wondering what you see as the difference between a knowledge network and a creativity network. I'm guessing that you could include kind of creativity and obviously innovation as you do, under the umbrella of knowledge and using, the models that you have. But is there anything specific in terms of kind of generating, creative work, fostering creative excellence across this kind of network or exchange that you can say that maybe steps beyond the research and the formulations that you cite that have been done more specifically on knowledge networks?
So if I got your question right, well, how can I differentiate knowledge networks from creative networks?
Yeah.
Well, I say, for example, in the examples of what communities of practice look like, there are many questions there that had nothing related to creativity in a way, and it's basically, how does anyone know the code to that thing? How could I get access to this? So it's basically sometimes it might be trivial knowledge, but it's trivial knowledge that not everybody has access to. So I think it's not only about fostering just creativity, it's more about helping your business as well. And there was an example, how can we achieve bulk discounts? Well, there can be a synergy between businesses that can relate and not have anything to do with creativity and still work for your business.
And I guess relatedly, over the last 20 years, there's been a lot of research not only on knowledge networks, but knowledge organizations and learning organizations. And essential to thinking about how to foster learning and to continue kind of circulating and managing knowledge has been the recognition of the importance of particular mechanisms or structures for learning. And I know you pointed to a number, I think, of different possibilities for the way that learning could be fostered, through the exchange and knowledge could be managed. Social media, for instance, you talked about, what you saw as the heartbeat, which I took to be a kind of, ongoing active use by participants of the exchange. But understanding that it steps beyond what you've already done, could you maybe share with us just some of your more speculative ideas about, for example, what uses of the various social media that you've cited, what those might look like in terms of again, how the exchange could be used by individuals to continue to learn?
Well, there was a big learning, and basically if you want to glue the network of people together, you shouldn't impose mediums on them. So basically, for example, there's a big discussion, we can have Google Hangouts. Who has a Google Plus account? Not many people. Sorry, Julie. But basically, it's different. And so would I state my network only runs through Google Hangouts, then I'm just leaving a huge part of people that might not want to log in or don't know how to. And for example, I did found that all friends lead to Facebook, and it was curious enough that everyone had a Facebook. So I think it should start from there. It should start, the conversation should start there, the fostering should start there, and then lead it to other networks which embrace knowledge sharing more, such as Quora, for example.
Okay, let me actually push a bit further on that. What you're describing, though, seems to still rely on a kind of ad hoc initiation of knowledge requests or knowledge sharing, whereas you have a question, trivial or not, and you reach out to Florian or to Nick or whomever. I'm wondering if you have in mind something more systematic as a way to mobilize or to energize the network or the exchange, and also the knowledge circulation that you're looking for.
I think a big part of that is when you define the member roles. and who will be the coordinator, who will be the editor, who will be the sponsor, who will be the support system. So once you define those roles, you can get a good synergy of how that can work eventually. And it's a global network, so it will rely heavily on internet, on how we connect together. We can't be present at all time together, so it will rely. But I think the key will be defining whose members of this exchange can have the time and can play the role of those 4 membership roles.
Great. Thank you. Terrific work.
Thank you.
So my first question was, what about fights between friends? And it's kind of a glib question, but it strikes me that there's a little bit of a tension between the advantages of organization and formalization and their disadvantages. So one of the advantages of organization and formalization of processes is that there are clear mechanisms to mediate conflict within groups. But it strikes me that one of the arguments that you're making about the sort of relative flexibility of this, the relative lack of formalization, the thing that feels like it's too constraining, can also be one of the things that's sort of a tension with it. And so I'm just wondering how those things get managed within knowledge networks, where you don't get the risk that you identified, which is fracturing, polarization, things like that.
Well, one of the conclusions Buchel and Rob shared was a downfall that they're made up of humans. And that's a pro and a con, Humans can be passionate, humans can be extremely complicated, and since communities are made up of humans, well, communities can be extremely complicated, can be very passionate as well. But I think it's a matter of, we're big boys, we need to know and differentiate where professional ends and where friendship starts. And if we know who is who and who is an expert at what, well, at least you can validate more his opinions as well. But I think there is a very strong as well labor for the coordinator, where the coordinator needs to work the public space as the private space. This coordinator needs to approach these 2 people that are fighting, tell them, oh, come on, man, let it go, it's okay, talk to this guy, it's okay. But coordinator, that's why they mentioned it as such a special role, and even causing such dependence, because it's such a vital role, and I think that will be his task.
One of the tensions I see also within the thesis is the idea of the necessity of mavericks to brands. And so, one of the ideas here is that it's really important within a knowledge network to have mavericks, to have people who basically don't believe in what's happening, to provide, cold water, kind of fresh perspective. And so I guess another kind of glib question, how do you brand a maverick? Or how do you get a maverick involved in a brand process that maybe they're not that receptive to?
Friendship. That's how you do it.
Great.
Through friendship.
Yeah, I don't need more than that. No, that's a great answer. I have a final question, which is this project is very Berlin School focused. And let's say for a moment that I don't care about the Berlin School, that I don't, that I want to think, no, but I mean this quite seriously.
Can I have your microphone?
That I exist in a world far away from this school. I'm wondering what the learning that you've generated within this can tell us about something a little bit more broadly. So are there ways in which you could extend the learnings that you've developed here about knowledge networks, friendships, brands to other contexts, either with clients or in areas that aren't really as connected to, say, this particular institution?
Well, I think with clients, definitely. Back home with one client, we're actually right now using Google Drive to have our agency traffic there. And we use this Excel sheet, we have all the traffic there, and it becomes sort of like this knowledge bank where you can keep track again with your client. But to answer your question more hopefully if someone grabs this presentation, they know how to build a knowledge network. And it doesn't have to be applied to creative industries, it's just a knowledge network, and they can apply it to their chess club or whatever they want.
Yeah, I mean, building on that question, on making other people interested in using it or participating in the network that have not come through the Berlin School experience. Have you thought about that?
Well, it's an issue, and I think there needs to be a barrier of entry to a knowledge network. And I think being a Berlin schooler is a huge barrier. And in a way, that barrier helps once you're in, it won't question other members. Like if this member says, oh, I'm the branding expert, who are you, man? No, come on, you're a Berlin schooler. So I think in a way, clubs have to be exclusive in a way, but they need to be aspirational as well. They need people to be like, I want to be part of that, you know, and work for that.
You know what I like most about, first of all, I think you observed it in a natural way, because you and all of you so far got benefits by exchanging thoughts and asking someone else, can you help me, and so forth. And I think it will really solve a big problem, because usually it means you create a license to ask. Yeah, and usually you have some kind of fear, can I ask, you know, do I bother somebody or so, and now you have a license to ask, to share your knowledge.
That's true.
And I mean, this is absolutely brilliant what you've presented here. Big applause.